The night air in Bahrain was thick with anticipation. It was the opening race of the 2025 season. The floodlights turned the desert circuit into a ribbon of brilliant white. Down the main straight, a flash of crimson shot past the grandstands, its engine screaming a note just a little different, a little sharper than the rest. This was the new Scuderia Volante SR24 behind the wheel, young prodigy Leo Ricci. He was pulling away, gapping the established front-runners from Mercedes Red Bull with an ease that seemed almost supernatural. Lap after lap, his lead grew, the car looking glued to the track through fast, sweeping corners. It was a dominant, breathtaking performance. Ricci crossed the line to take a stunning victory. The paddock was buzzing. A fairy tale start for the Italian team, a glorious return to the top step of the podium. But amidst the champagne and celebration, a different conversation was starting in rival garages. Hushed tones, pointed fingers at television monitors showing on-board replays. Scuderia Volante, the flying squad, is a team steeped in Formula One history. With their iconic crimson livery, they are to F1 what Ferrari is to, well, Ferrari. They have a passionate fan base and a legacy of legendary drivers and dramatic victories. However, the preceding decade had been a tough one. They had slipped from being championship contenders to midfield runners, struggling to keep pace with the technical might of giants like Mercedes, Red Bull. The 2025 season was meant to be their comeback year. They had poured a massive budget into the development of their new car, the SR24, and had hired Marco Bianchi, a shrewd and ambitious team principal, to lead the charge. The car was a thing of beauty, but its performance was what truly stunned everyone. The rule at the heart of the impending storm was a complex but crucial one, Article 3.15 of the FIA's technical regulations. In simple terms, this rule states that any part of the car that influences its aerodynamic performance must be rigidly secured to the entirely sprung part of the car, and must remain immobile in relation to it. This is the no-moving aerodynamic devices rule. It's designed to prevent teams from creating wings or floors that change shape at different speeds. For example, flexing down on the straights to reduce drag and then returning to a high downforce position for the corners. Such flexi wings and flexi floors have been a constant cat-and-mouse game between the teams and the FIA for years, as even a few millimeters of movement can provide a huge performance advantage. The part of the SR24 that drew suspicion was its floor, specifically the floor edges. The floor of a modern F1 car is its most powerful aerodynamic tool, generating a massive amount of downforce through a phenomenon known as ground effect. By shaping the underside of the car, teams create a low-pressure zone that effectively sucks the car to the tarmac. This is what allows F1 cars to take corners at incredible speeds. Rival teams, armed with high-resolution trackside photographs and video analysis, noticed something odd about the Volante's floor. At high speeds on the straights, the outer edge of the floor appeared to be deflecting downwards, sealing the airflow underneath the car more effectively. Then, as the car entered braking zones and slower corners, it seemed to return to its original position. This visible deflection was the crucial clue. According to the rules, the floor should be completely rigid. The FIA conducts static load tests in the garage to check for this, where they hang weights on various parts of the car to ensure they don't bend beyond a tiny specified tolerance. If the SR24's floor was moving on track, it suggested one of two things. Either the FIA's tests weren't sufficient to catch the movement, or Scuderia Volante had devised an incredibly clever system to pass the static tests in the garage, while still allowing the floor to flex at speed on the track. This second possibility was far more serious, as it would imply a deliberate and calculated attempt to circumvent the regulations. The battle lines were being drawn, not on the track, but in the engineering offices and the scrutineering bay. The first official murmurs of protest began after the third race of the season in Australia. The murmurs grew inside the paddock. Scuderia Volante had dominated again. The rival technical directors lodged a joint query. Mercedes, Red Bull, McLaren, and the query was handed to Joe Bauer. The query was carefully worded. It didn't directly accuse Volante of cheating. Instead, it asked for clarification on how the rigidity of the floor edges was tested. It's a common tactic in Formula One, a polite way of saying, "We think someone is breaking the rules." The teams presented their evidence, high-speed camera footage showing visible flexing of the SR24's floor. Nicolas Tombazis, FIA's head of single-seater technical matters, reviewed it. A veteran engineer, he took the query very seriously. The evidence was compelling enough to warrant a deeper look. Before the next race, the Spanish Grand Prix, the FIA announced a new, stricter load test for floor edges. They would apply force in a different direction and with more weight. The test was designed to mimic aerodynamic forces at over 300 kilometers per hour. That was a clear signal to the paddock that the FIA was responding. At the Spanish Grand Prix, all eyes were on Scuderia Volante. During Friday practice, the SR24 suddenly looked ordinary. The massive advantage they'd shown in the first 3 races had vanished. Leo Ricci and his teammate were struggling for balance. Their lap times were now in the mix with the front runners. The change was so dramatic it couldn't be a coincidence. To pass the tougher load tests, Volante had apparently stiffened their floor, and in doing so, they'd lost the magic that made them unbeatable. The whispers in the paddock turned into a roar. The circumstantial evidence was now overwhelming. Marco Bianchi, the Volante team principal, was defiant. Cornered by journalists, he blamed a poor setup choice. "We simply got it wrong today," he insisted, face a mask of frustration. "Barcelona is unique. We haven't found the right balance." He claimed the new test made no difference. The car was always legal, but nobody was buying it. The timing was too perfect, the performance drop-off too severe. Other teams, convinced, formally protested the results of the first 3 races. The matter escalated from a technical query to an official investigation. The FIA had no choice but to impound one of the Volante cars for a full inspection. The investigation began in earnest on Monday, May 12, 2025. The FIA transported Scuderia Volante's SR24 to Geneva, the car driven by Leo Ricci in Bahrain. This was no longer about simple load tests in a garage. This was a full forensic teardown. A team of FIA investigators led by Nicolas Tombazis dismantled the car piece by piece. Their focus was the floor assembly and the mounting points to the chassis. They were looking for any mechanism that could allow controlled flexing, rigid under old static tests, yet flexible under dynamic race loads. The initial external inspection revealed nothing obvious. The carbon fiber work was immaculate. All mounting points looked standard, but the cleverest solutions are often hidden from view. They brought in sophisticated scanning equipment, industrial CT scanners, ultrasonic testers, to peer inside the composite floor. The scans showed the internal layup of the carbon fiber. They searched for hidden joints, voids, materials with different properties without cutting the floor apart. The process was slow and methodical, every square centimeter documented. While the physical inspection continued, a separate FIA team chased digital evidence. They seized the team's data servers and laptops of key engineers. Investigators sifted terabytes of data, computer-aided design files, CFD simulation data, internal emails, and documents. They were hunting the digital blueprint of the illegal design. A flexing floor this complex isn't accidental. There should be design files, simulation results showing the effect, communications between the engineers. Investigators hunted that electronic paper trail. Marco Bianchi and the team's lawyers insisted they were innocent. They said they were cooperating fully, confident the FIA would find the car legal. Bianchi claimed the edge was aerodynamic know-how, not cheating. "We are an open book," he said. "The FIA has all our data, all our designs. They will find nothing, because there is nothing to find." This is a baseless accusation from rivals who cannot accept being beaten. Yet dread was settling over the factory in Italy as they awaited the FIA's findings. The breakthrough came a week into the investigation. The digital forensics team dug through archived email servers. They found a chain of emails between two senior aerodynamicists, dated the previous summer. The emails discussed a concept codenamed Progetto Mala, Project Spring. The conversation detailed a special composite for the floor's edge. It was incredibly stiff under a slow applied force, like the FIA static load test. But under a rapid, high-frequency load, like aerodynamic buffeting on a straight, it softened and allowed controlled flex. This was the smoking gun. The emails included simulation data showing performance gains. That data matched the SR24's real-world advantage in the first 3 races. Investigators now knew exactly what to look for. The physical inspection team revisited the car's floor. They used a resonance hammer to tap along the floor's edge. A roughly 80-centimeter section produced a different acoustic signature. It was subtle but detectable. A CT scan revealed a laminate of different density embedded in the carbon fiber, a hidden spring. The system was diabolically clever. It was a purely passive mechanism. No moving parts, no hydraulics, no electronic actuators. It was a materials science trick. The composite behaved differently under a slow garage push versus fast-track vibrations. It was designed to defeat the FIA's testing methodology. That was a deliberate breach of Article 315. Aerodynamic components must be immobile. Selectively immobile was a violation of spirit and letter. When confronted with the evidence, the emails, the simulation data, the physical discovery, Scuderia Volante's defense crumbled. Marco Bianchi and his senior engineers were summoned to a hearing with the FIA World Motorsport Council. The team's lawyers argued their interpretation of immobile and claimed it was a passive innovation, not a movable device. But the Progetto Mala emails showed intent. The FIA Council was not swayed. The emails proved the device was built to flex on track while passing static tests. Clear intent to circumvent the rules. On June 2, 2025, the FIA World Motorsport Council delivered its verdict, and it was one of the harshest penalties in modern Formula One history. The council found Scuderia Volante guilty of a fraudulent breach of the technical regulations. The judgment was severe, intended not just to punish the team, but also to send an unequivocal message to the rest of the paddock that cheating would not be tolerated. The first and most immediate consequence was disqualification from 3 Grand Prix, Bahrain Grand Prix, Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, Australian Grand Prix. All the points, podiums, and victories they had earned were stripped away. Leo Ricci's dream start to the season was erased from the record books. The financial and sporting penalties were crippling. The team was fined a staggering $100 million, a penalty echoing McLaren's 2007 Spygate fine. Scuderia Volante was excluded from the 2025 Constructors' Championship, receiving no prize money for the season. A further multi-million-dollar hit. Team principal Marco Bianchi, Senior Engineer 1, Senior Engineer 2 were handed multi-year bans, effectively ending their careers. The council held senior management directly responsible for a culture that allowed the breach. The drivers, Leo Ricci and his teammate, were deemed to have had no knowledge of the illegal device. Investigators found no evidence they knew the specifics of the car's floor design. Drivers are not usually involved in such technical minutiae, so they face no personal sanctions beyond the loss of race results. However, the scandal left a permanent mark on their careers.
I am a racing driver. I drive the car they give me as fast as I can, Ricci told the press. To find out the car was not legal. It is the worst feeling. I feel betrayed.
The verdict sent shockwaves through Formula One. Rivals felt vindicated, but there was no celebration. A scandal of this magnitude damages the sport's credibility. Fans were left feeling cheated, questioning the authenticity of races. The story dominated headlines for weeks, overshadowing on-track action. Scuderia Volante was brought to its knees, its reputation in tatters. In the wake of the Progetto Mala scandal, the FIA immediately moved to change its procedures to prevent a repeat incident. The governing body realized that relying solely on static load tests was no longer sufficient in an era of advanced materials science. They introduced a new set of scrutineering checks. High-speed cameras were installed above the track at key points on the main straight of every circuit, specifically to monitor for any illegal flexing of aerodynamic surfaces during live race sessions. This eye in the sky meant that any visible deflection could be spotted in real time and investigated immediately, making it much harder for teams to hide such a device. Furthermore, the technical regulations were rewritten with more explicit language. The definition of immobile was clarified to remove any ambiguity, and new regulations governing the use of composite materials and internal structures in aerodynamic components were introduced. The FIA also mandated that teams must submit a detailed bill of materials for key parts like the floor and wings, allowing for more targeted physical inspections. The scandal accelerated the shift from purely reactive, post-race scrutineering to a more proactive, intelligence-led approach, combining physical checks with digital forensics and on-track monitoring. The cat-and-mouse game would continue, but the cat now had sharper claws. For Scuderia Volante, the consequences were long-lasting. The team spent the rest of the 2025 season as a backmarker, the car's performance a shadow of its former self without the illegal floor. Sponsors departed, and the team was forced to downsize its operations due to the massive financial hit. They returned in 2026 with new management and a renewed commitment to transparency, but the stain of the scandal remained. It served as a stark reminder that a team's reputation, built over decades, can be destroyed in a single season. The story of Scuderia Volante became a cautionary tale whispered in every F1 factory for years to come. Ultimately, the scandal, while damaging in the short term, may have been a necessary wake-up call for Formula One. It reinforced a fundamental principle: the sport is a contest of engineering genius within a shared set of rules. Pushing those rules to their absolute limit is part of the game, but deliberately and fraudulently breaking them undermines the very foundation of fair competition.